Hello and welcome to another episode of the Body Mind Index, and I'm your host, Jerry Pujols. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Ian Devereux White. Ian is the CEO, co-founder of Smith Devereux Wines. Ian, amongst many things, is also a singer, songwriter, guitarist, also teaches boxing, involved in nonprofits, also very generous with his time, and also very open to the topic of mental health, and we'll dive into some of that in today's episode. I am just excited that I had the opportunity to meet somebody like this. When I walked to my studio, Ian was sitting outside with a shirt that said love across the chest. And when Ian opened his mouth, that's all I felt coming out of him. So I'm honored to introduce you to a young person who is very successful, but happens to have traveled a journey that has led him down a path of authenticity, generosity, kindness, and so many more things that embody just a great human being. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I enjoyed spending time with Ian. At the end of today's episode, you're gonna hear one of Ian's songs that touched my heart, and I think you'll find him as interesting as I did. So enjoy today's episode.
Lift off in 3, 2, 1.
I told the last guest that we had, I said, this is an indulgence for me.
Mm-hmm.
So this moment is an indulgence. It's a total indulgence, as if I was having decadent chocolate or something amazing. So thank you for doing this, Ian.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Grateful to be here.
And I know enough to be dangerous about you and your history, but I love to just get into that and just get to know you a little better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we know each other through John Wyman, who's a close friend of mine and apparently a very close friend of yours.
He is just an inspirational human being who I think has made his life has been about helping other people, and I think that's a beautiful thing. So that's why when he connected us, I thought there's no question I would like to be a part of whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I noticed that there was like zero resistance there.
Of course not.
Yeah, that was impressive, and it spoke to me about who John is.
Mm-hmm.
It was wow. It was like whoever he says should meet, both parties understand that they should.
Absolutely. You know, I've been on a number of boards in the past, but I've got 2 young children, and so recently I've declined all opportunities to be on boards, even those where I felt I could be helpful. But John said, "There's a board I'd really like for you to consider, at least come for a meeting." And I said, absolutely. And it was interesting to even hear myself say that, because for so long when I've heard that question, it's like, I'd really be interested in finding a way to support you. However, I'm not committing. But when John asked, I said yes. And I'm still sitting on that board, and I'm gratefully so. I had no idea what it was. What I knew is that somebody I trusted and cared about, who had the same focus on mental health and trying to find a way to make the world a better place, recommended it. And so I said, okay.
Wow. Okay, so now I've heard a lot. I picked up a lot just from the little bit that you just said. Tell me a little bit about your connection to mental health, if you don't mind.
My connection, I suppose, is relatively loose, especially since I lack it myself. No, I'm just kidding.
I would agree with some of that.
I think at some level we probably all
Yeah.
do. But no, for me, it's been working with John. I went about 5 years ago, I crashed and burned in that I had been chasing for quite some time this idea of success that included women and money and all of these other things that for me were really far away from my own vision of success, my internal vision of success, my moral compass, I think, is really what it was far away from. And so I was experiencing what people call anxiety. I don't love labels, and so I would just say that I was feeling incredibly anxious, so much so that I found myself before work curled up on the floor in my closet, because that helped, or squeezing my dog, which always helped. And I also, despite what appeared outwardly to be achieving success, money, and all of the other things, at some level, even a modicum of fame, I felt what people often refer to as depression, but I would say is I just felt depressed. So here I am with a young family and a beautiful wife and everything that really that I loved, but all I wanted was more. And so I was reaching and reaching and reaching and getting further and further away from uh, my own moral compass, from my own balance. And so I really I crashed hard, and it didn't come easily for me. It wasn't. I didn't recognize it until some police officers helped me find it.
Yeah.
And so it came in the form of a DUI and a little bit of time in jail, just 2 nights.
Yeah.
And it was what I would say one of the most difficult days and periods of my life, and also the best. I'm so grateful for those police officers for pulling me over before I hurt somebody. I'm so grateful for spending that short time in jail, and for all of the love and support and kindness and hard knocks that came after it. Not long after that, my mom said to me, Ian, I love you. I've always loved you, but it's been a long time since I could say that I actually liked you.
Yeah.
And those kinds of truths came from the people that I loved most. And it was a really amazing and beautiful opportunity. And it was through that experience that I began to talk with John and walk with John and explore mental health. And it put me in a wonderful situation, because as I got my feet back underneath me, it gave me the opportunity, or provided the opportunity, to start helping others who were going through something similar. And I loved that, and I engaged in that. And I began reading everything that I could, other people's stories. I really found a way to fight off judgments of others, to push away anything that before I considered good or bad or right or wrong, and start to just view it through the lens of experiences. The idea of walking a mile in another human's shoes, something that I always thought I could sort of do through empathy or sympathy, realizing that there's no such thing as walking a mile in somebody else's shoes, because even if you put your shoes on, you have no idea what's going on in their body, their past, their history, their mind. And so it was through all of those experiences and the time since then that I've come to believe that we see doctors for our body all the time. We have annual checkups. We constantly consult WebMD. We're always, this hurts. I wonder what that is. There's all this curiosity as to what's happening with our bodies. But if there's something wrong with our mind, or there's, if not wrong, something that we're uncertain about, something that hurts, something that doesn't feel right, so often we just lock that up, or we talk to a friend, but we don't see a doctor, or we don't talk to a professional, or we don't seek answers beyond those that might cause us shame. And so for me, that's where my journey really began, was that personal experience of finding myself so far from my own true north.
Well, man, what are you doing now?
I have a small wine brand,
Mm-hmm.
and I love doing that. I host people in the vineyard. I make wines with some wonderful people, and we donate money back to different causes. Mm-hmm. Every year I make a wine with a celebrity, and we donate to a different cause of their choice. Right now I'm donating to Alana's Voice with one wine that I make with a gentleman named Kenny Arnoff, who's a drummer. I'm making a wine with Cedric the Entertainer, who's a dear friend of mine, and we're donating wines back from that. So much laughter in that relationship.
I could only imagine.
And we're donating money from that to his mother's foundation, which is Red Rose Reed's Literacy Foundation. So I'm enjoying doing that and making those wines. I'm playing in a band called the band High Noon.
You're a guitarist?
I am. And I'm playing in a band and writing a lot of music. We got the opportunity to play Bottle Rock. We played the benefit for Ukraine, especially meaningful because through this process, I learned that I'm half Ukrainian, 5 generations back. I'd always said Russian, and then my aunt corrected me after the conflict began, or the war, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And she said, you can't say that anymore. We have 5 generations for Kev. You're Ukrainian. I said, oh, how interesting. And I'm not saying me too. I'm not having the experience that they are in Ukraine, but it was wonderful to hear that, and then be able to work with John on that and play music there. And recently, I began playing music with a friend of mine named Jefferson Lee Rhodes. We started a band when we were 15 years old. And right about the same time that I was, as I said, crashing and burning, he was going through a really difficult time too, one that ultimately resulted in a series of small strokes, and he lost his ability to sing and play guitar. And he's one of the most amazingly naturally talented vocalists and musicians I've ever met. And as I was pulling the pieces back together and finding myself and my true north again, he was doing the same, and now we found each other, and we're playing music and writing songs again that are country, Americana, and faith-based. And so music it saved me so many times and will continue to. For me, it's absolutely such a joy to be able to play music with my kids, sing, listen to other people's songs. But music is a beautiful thing for me.
Wow. You've been in Napa a long time?
15 years, I think, is safe.
Yeah, my best and dearest friend, he lived next door. His wife still lives there. It's funny, I just saw her outside in her front yard, and if I would have pulled over to say hi, I wouldn't be here right now, because she's running really late, because every time her and I see each other, there's a meaningful conversation. And she's a vocalist and also a multi-talented artist in so many mediums, and he was a guitarist. They traveled all over Europe and did that. So
very cool.
I'm already picking up why John would want us to meet in so many ways. It's fascinating that he would think this is a good meeting based on the road that you've traveled. I'm also going to assume that you're in your 30s.
Thank you for that. I'm 43 years old.
43. So very fit. He also did say that you're, I don't know if he used the word fanatic, but he says you're very much into fitness and working out. Is that fair?
That is, I am a boxing coach actually as well.
Wow.
And so on Mondays, Wednesdays, and now Fridays as well, I coach boxing. And that's a wonderful experience because I learned so much as I do it. When I had my first son, I could no longer compete in tennis and some of the other things. Yeah. And I decided I would get back into boxing. I had originally gotten into boxing in college because I was in a situation with my girlfriend that was pretty scary. And what was scariest was that I had no idea what to do, no confidence that I could handle any kind of a situation. And it wasn't my ability to fight, I don't think, or not fight, that would have helped the situation, but rather the internal confidence and calmness that I think would have been within. And that's what I love to teach, is that it's not about fighting. I think that the toughest people in this world are those who can run and who know when to say, I'd like to buy you a drink, instead of I'd like to create a conflict. I very rarely see those people who know how to use their bodies in an aggressive way choose to do so unless absolutely necessary. And so it's wonderful to work with different people to help them understand their bodies and the way that they move, and to gain the inner confidence to never have to have a physical conflict. The calm that comes with knowing how to use your body is, I think, there's almost nothing better for stopping a fight.
So what would you attribute the depth that I sense in your discourse? I sense so much depth. Where does that come from?
I think that if there is depth to be found, it's primarily from the people I surround myself with. I have really, really wonderful people in my life, and I choose to listen to them, and I choose to learn, and I think perhaps I choose not to be right or to assume others are wrong. And in this space, for me, is an opportunity to learn. I think when we sat down, I mentioned authenticity. Yeah. For me, that requires very little planning, but a lot of being calm. And so for me, listening, being calm, being aware, being authentic, and connecting with other spirits, with other human beings, is wonderful. I think so often people, I'll speak for myself, so often in the past, I've chosen to have an agenda. I've chosen to have a purpose and an outcome that I was trying to achieve. And the more that I am there instead of here, the further I am away from a genuine moment with a new friend, with somebody who I can touch, with somebody who I can engage with. And I think sometimes when one chooses to be present and here and aware, that can be perceived as depth.
I was talking to my good friend Guy, who just left the building a little while ago. The tiny building, I'm part of, it's a struggle to start doing a little thing like this, because you start thinking, a podcast, and how do I want to structure it, right? You think of structure first, and systems and algorithms, and how is it going to be successful? And it was when I was
I think after my first or second episode, I decided that this is an indulgence. This is not for profit. This is not for notoriety. This is not for anything. This is for a curiosity more than anything. And then what I also learned early on, and Guy, the person that had been here, he's been involved in super large projects, tech companies. I mean, all kinds of interesting things, productions of big things, and he understands authenticity. You'll have to watch the episode with him because I think you'll find it fascinating. It was the longest episode we've ever done. It just went really long.
Very cool.
But it was organically. Even he said it when he looked at the time. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened." And that I found fascinating in its own authenticity. That the moment was just a present moment, and time didn't even matter.
That's right.
When he had all kinds of appointments to go to afterwards, but it stopped. And I learned early on that in the process of doing something like this, you think, and your mind instinctively tells you to prepare for these moments and this and that. And then I learned early on that it's in the not preparing that we let go. And then, like a friend of mine says, a good friend of mine who happens to be a bush pilot in Alaska, he says, you should only hold on loosely, because the holding on tight or the wanting to fit a square peg in a round hole or having the agenda, I think that's where we lose so much. And you know, these moments are really it. You know, they're really it. So I'd love to peel this onion with you a little bit.
Sure.
Because I've heard so much in such little time that now I'm really curious. You know, so you've met somebody like John, and you've had your moments, as we've all had. I don't know that anybody's exempt from the moments of, you know, hitting sort of a low or a bottom or whatever we want to call it. And, you know, in my family, we've had people hit, you know, their own lows or their own bottoms, and we've been afflicted and affected by mental illness and things like that. And me, even myself, I always start by throwing myself at that sword. Is, you know, for me, it's been since I was a young man, or maybe even a young teenage boy, suffering from anxiety attacks, and to the point where by the time I was 19, 20, 21, they became debilitating enough that I couldn't leave the house. You know, and until today, I still take one pill a day that kind of keeps it all together, because if I stop taking that pill, the side effects from the pill are bad enough to because I've been taking it for over 30 years. But mental illness is something that's near and dear to me, because it's also the one thing that even till today has the stigma where most of us are not vulnerably transparent about the topic. And for that reason, I'm compelled to being more transparent and vulnerable with the topic, to hopefully allow it to help people become maybe a little bit more comfortable within themselves, to either fight through the judgment that people are going to have over you, and be strong and just know that you're just trying to help another human being. But if you're not ready, that I also respect it, and we all have to travel through it and see where but I love the fact that you're here today and you're doing good, and I love to know more about, you know, kind of where you grew up and kind of what got you to some of the challenges that you may have gone through.
Yeah,
if you're open to that. If
of
not,
course.
we can go in a different direction, man.
I'm an open book. I'd like to respond to a couple of things that you said, just because I think that you worded them beautifully, and there's some really wonderful thoughts that you shared. One of them, as you're talking about holding on to things. My brother just got married this weekend, and he leads a very fluid life.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He's not a very scheduled human being. You may not reply to emails, things like that.
Good.
And during the wedding, though, a lot of scheduling, a lot of things became very rigid, and I could see it was upsetting him. And I said, Brad, you lead a very fluid life. And when things are fluid, they don't break. They move and they bend. And if I were you, I would continue through this wedding to be fluid. Allow it to be fluid, and don't take on other people's discomforts. Because if you become rigid, if this become rigid, then perhaps you risk breaking and not having the experience that this is, and that was, it was a good big brother moment. He's like, okay, yeah, you know what,
Cool.
I'm gonna stay authentic. I'm going
Yeah.
to be me. And it worked out beautifully. And sure, some people ate later than they would have liked, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. But to your point, when we grip these things, and this is a very, very old thought, but you put the sand in the palm of your hand. If you just hold it, it will stay there until perhaps the wind blows it away, and that's okay. But if you grip it, the tighter you grip it, the more it slips through your fingers. The more we force it, the more, in my experience, that I reach for things, that I reach for outcomes, the less likely I am to achieve them. And if I do even achieve them, I've lost myself on the way, because all of those beautiful moments in between were ignored. And rarely then, when I achieve what it is I thought that I was looking to achieve, do I feel a sense of accomplishment or peace, because from that stretch, I just have to stretch to the next. And so I really hear what you're saying when you said that, and in those moments so clearly, about just being present. Your question about kind of my path to where I am, I was living in the Oakland Hills, and I was sort of on a trajectory towards being a marketing person, perhaps a marketing executive. I was working in San Francisco. I was working at publishers, and I feel as though I was really growing in that direction. I had previously worked for Lonely Planet Travel Guides and done a tour of 28 states on a 32-foot RV, which was a wonderful experience, getting to see America. I lived in London and worked for the Environmental Law Foundation. I thought maybe I wanted to be an environmental lawyer. Traveled enough to really get to understand some other cultures. And when I'd come home, I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. And so I started on that path. And then I met this woman who lived in the wine country. And so I started to spend time up here, and I shifted towards working in the cheese industry and food industry and towards the wine industry. But it's very difficult to make the jump, or it was for me to make the jump into the wine industry. And I was too, I guess, outwardly it would be my ego. I had too much ego to take a job at the beginning, in the wine industry.
Sure.
I was too good for that.
Sure.
And when in reality, I think most of these things really come down to insecurity. I was too insecure to accept a position and learn and prove myself. And so that insecurity throughout my life, insecurity has held me back, and fear. My stepdad once said, any decision you make based on fear is probably not the right decision. And I've learned that lesson over and over again. I'm afraid to do this. That's a really wonderful opportunity to look inward and say, well, why am I afraid? Thank you for the fear, because fear keeps us alive. But is this a fear that's realistic? One that's going to provide growth? And to sort of circle back to a topic you brought up, in terms of fear and in terms of acceptance and all of those things, these hard moments that you talked about with your family, these challenges, these walls that we hit. I always tell my kids, the good things, the easy things, the beautiful things, they're worth a wink and a tip of the cap. But it's the hard things. It's the things that hurt that deserve our generosity and time, because it's from these that we grow. And so I look back on these times of insecurity and fear and being anxious and curling up in balls and closets. That was my soul telling me, Ian, you're not where you want to be. You are making choices that are far from who you are. They're not right, they're not wrong, but this is where you are. And the further you get away from where you are into the past and what you feel you deserve and what you've earned, well, that's where I was finding anxiety, or rather depression, excuse me. That's where I was finding sadness. I was reaching backwards, and in that gap from where I was to where I stood was depression, because I didn't think where I deserved to be. And then I would look forward to my goals and to where I wanted to be, and that was such a stretch. It was really not somewhere I wanted to be, in here. And as I stretched forwards, I found anxiety. So to the past depression, into the future anxiety, never really being right where I am. And so through that period of time, that's where I found, eventually getting so far away that things kind of crashed. And I'm blessed to have had the support to bring it back together. But after a long time trying to be in the wine industry and finding my way and making these wines and drinking the wines and traveling the country and talking to my wife and son on my phone instead of being with them in person, and watching dollars add up and spirit run low.
Yes.
That was where I found myself. And so, yeah, writing for Lonely Planet was beautiful. Traveling the world, living in London, experiencing all these wonderful things all over the world. It helped me ultimately build a construct of what I feel is now a person that I want to become. And one of the biggest issues for me in all of that was that concept that we began with, the concept of success. And so when I was going through all of the process that was, reading and being around other people who had problems with addiction and alcohol, because one of the things that was getting me down was a lot of alcohol. I quit drinking for a year. It wasn't a problem. It was really nice. I've always, I've really been, if not addicted, certainly very into health. Yeah. And so I decided it'd be great for me to quit for a year, and I did, and it wasn't a problem. Yeah. But when I came back, the problems returned. So I took another break for 6 months. Again, not a problem. I'd never drank in the morning, sure, a mimosa on vacation, sure. But that wasn't for me. That wasn't exactly the issue. But what it really became for me was a problem, because I wasn't my best self when I was drinking, and then I was making decisions that were further and further away from myself. And so through that process, I was like, well, what is success for me? And at that point, it was money, and I was picturing boats, a lot of women in bikinis. Even though I had a beautiful wife at home, it was like I was picturing what I see in MTV videos.
Absolutely.
All of these things, like that's what everybody wants, and anybody who tells you that they don't is lying to you.
That equals happiness.
That's happiness right there. I know it is, because that helicopter is going to drop me off, and I will have arrived. Yeah. And so, that didn't work for me. Even as I began to sort of achieve my small piece of whatever that was,
Understood.
Further away I got from myself. And so I redefined success for myself, and I defined success on a daily basis. I chose 6 things. Sometimes it's 4 things, sometimes it's 8 things, but really 6 that I've relied on now for a number of years. Things that I want to say I've strived to be each day. And that is my hope, is by striving to be those things, I will be more like a human being who embodies those things as time goes on. I don't have I try to avoid the arrogance of hubris to say that I am these things, or that I embody these things, or that I will be able to achieve these things, but rather that I will make an effort to be these things each and every day. And for me, I want to be loving, kind, honest, generous, grateful, and humble. Those are the 6 things that I live by. And if I can get in my bed and say, today, in every way possible, I chose to be those things, then today I was successful. And whatever comes, business, life, whatever it may be, then I have achieved my vision of success. I mentioned that to somebody recently. I said, well, that's really nice, like at a spiritual level, dude, but what about the dollars? And
I get that a lot.
Yeah, and that's fair, right?
Yeah.
And at some level, what I would say to that is, if money comes from that practice, wonderful. And if it doesn't, perhaps it's not for me to be able to achieve that level of financial success. I don't know, and I'm okay with not knowing. I want to greet the world with clear eyes and an open heart, and see what comes.
I'm kind of getting comfortable, because can we go into that a little bit?
Sure.
So I'm curious, because I think a lot of times when you hear something like that, maybe it comes from people that have not reached a level that they're satisfied with, or that they're content with, or that it amounts to something that they're proud of. I'm curious, because I hear the same things somewhat often, and it's usually by somebody that it's either on their way, trying to claw their way up there, and it feels like they're like before I got there, it feels like they're in it for the wrong reasons. They're like I was, like they think that once you're there, you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, there was a time when, as a little kid, I left my house when I was 15 years old, to live alone, and from Miami in a city.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, by the time I was 17, I was in New York City. So even a bigger city to be alone. And then luckily I found my way to Napa. I met my wife, and here 35 years later, I'm lucky enough to say that
Wow.
she put up with me. So I'm super lucky. But I just find it interesting that it's, you hit these benchmarks, or you have these ideas. As a young man in Miami, I remember I would think of, God, I grew up in Miami in the 80s when the cocaine was flowing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, flowing. I've never paid for a gram of cocaine in my life because I haven't had to.
Right.
It was always there. I don't think I was addicted because I didn't do a lot of it. But if there was a party and there was blow,
yeah,
why not? And but I also met a lot of people, a lot of kids. I mean, we had kids driving into my high school at barely driver's licenses, and they were coming in with Porsches 911s and all that because their parents were drug dealers.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with an image of what success was,
mm-hmm.
of that nature or of that kind. And I thought, and as a young boy, I used to think, I can't wait till I buy myself a Porsche Carrera, and I can just see myself driving over that bridge and the lights of Key Biscayne, kind of like a Don Johnson moment.
I arrived.
Oh my God, yeah. So, once I hit a level of some financial success, and I bought a Porsche, and I brought it to my house and put it in the garage, I remember how thrilling the drive was on the way home from the car dealer,
mm-hmm.
from the dealership. And I remember how disappointing the feeling was when the garage door came down.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most hollow feeling. I thought, this is not what I thought this was going to be. I thought this feeling would stay.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you agree with that. Is, I think, when people ask you, what about the money, is because they also, like me, thought that that's the recipe. The money is going to make it all good.
Right. I think ultimately it's a balance between money and power.
Yeah.
And what I've found in my life is that both of those things leave me feeling, as it did you, empty.
Yeah.
Because my perception was, my idea was that once I had that, then this space would fill in.
Yeah.
And that I would be more because of something else. And what I realized is that it's a house of cards. The more things I rely on to define me, anything outside of myself, that could be my marriage, it could be anything outside of me that I rely on as a sense of happiness, well, you flick that card away and it all comes tumbling down. And these houses of cards, they are empty.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many cards they are. And so that's my experience. And that's not to say that others might not find happiness in those things. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, at least, my experience is that things, relationships, anything outside of me doesn't fill up that space.
Yeah.
Once that space, I fill it up. That is when I'm able to give. And when I'm able to give or share my experience, that for me is the fullness.
Yeah.
I was reading, and it's last night actually, Tao Te Ching, I believe, it was talking, one of the things is talking about a jar of jam. It's not the jar nor the jam, but rather the space that the jam can hold that is so important. And so I love that, because I love blackberry jam and raspberry jam specifically, and I like cute little jars too. I don't know why.
So do I.
But they're adorable, and it's a really cool thing. But it's the opportunity that the vessel represents.
Oh.
And that's what I love, is that this vessel represents for me opportunity for new relationships, for new learning, and nothing else than to share my experiences with others, as you were mentioning, to bring hope. Because when you were talking about sharing openly our struggles with life, with mental illness, whatever labels we choose to define it, but just in general, our struggles in this beautiful but often confusing and crazy life that we lead. One thing I have found to be true for myself, and often I've seen in others, and that is that hope is contagious. Perhaps the most contagious thing on this planet. And when you share hope through your experience, not because I'm telling you, you can do this, you will do this, this is the result of these actions, but rather, I went through this.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
and I'm okay. And I'm going to keep going through it. And this is my story. I think, as you were saying, through what you share, you provide hope that they too, through their own struggles, may emerge into a place where they experience joy. I read not long ago as well that what other reason are we here than to experience the maximum amount of joy and provide the maximum amount of joy for others? Like, if that's what you can say every day is, today I experienced the maximum amount of joy and provided the maximum amount of joys for others in my life. On my deathbed, if I look back and say, in this lifetime, I experienced the most joy and provided the most joy through helping others, through smiling, through laughing, through music, whatever it may be, I can't imagine for me laying there and being like, yep, I made enough money for 3 generations. They ain't got to work. I got cars. I got money. I got girls. I got all that. I locked it and loaded it. Like, yeah. But were you joyful? Yeah. You know, maybe the answer is yes, in which case, great. Yeah. But maybe not too. And what did you perhaps sacrifice in order to achieve those material things? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps you didn't sacrifice anything, and that was what brought you joy and brought others joy. But for me, that hasn't been the case. I do at least want to say, however, that I'm aware that lacking certain things, whether that be something chemical like serotonin or dopamine, or whether that be something like money, can also, while you may not be able to buy happiness, being short on those things, whether they be brain chemicals or whether they be dollars, can make life really hard to experience joy. And so it's very easy, I think, to take things for granted and say money won't bring happiness, or I'm only, I'm just a vessel. And it was these things that are all true for me. It is also true for me that I understand that I have an old truck, but it gets me from point A to point B. Without that, I wouldn't be here today. And it would be hard to share this experience or the joy that it brings me and hopefully others without that truck. Yeah. Now, if I didn't have that truck, or maybe I don't have the money for gas to put in that truck again, or maybe I don't have the ability to take my son, he's now playing Pee Wee football. Well, I've got a schedule that allows me to help him coach. I get to coach baseball and football. Well, if I didn't have money, I wouldn't be able to take the time to do that because I'd be working a second job at night. So I think it can be very reductionistic and perhaps naive to suggest that material wellness is not a part of wellness. And I don't want to come off as someone who would ever suggest that, even though my belief is very strongly that those won't build happiness. They do lay a foundation, without which I know that I wouldn't be able to experience the level of joy, or hopefully give the level of joy I hope to.
I love that you said that, because it's so selfless to think about joy in that way, because, I think about joy as in feeling joy. I don't think about joy as in providing or giving joy. Honestly, haven't until this moment. So I just find that super interesting and something that I want to explore. Yeah, because I think I have to believe, like in anything, providing joy is joy. I have to believe that if you can give that. I've always known that to give is to receive. I've always known that. The generosity that somebody like John and people like Mindy, his wife, and the people like that they just constantly are selfless in giving, and some of the work that they do and just organizing and orchestrating these things, they just require so much time and energy, and time is the most valuable thing. It's not the money that they can provide, it's the time they're providing what's really valuable. Mm-hmm. But like that, it's, by giving that time, their world is filled with abundance in so many ways. And I know, if I know this about them, is that they know that and they're grateful for it. I've been blessed with a lot of work like they have done, and like I'm sure you have, because all this requires, as my friend said a little while ago on my last podcast, is a foundation and one brick at a time. It's been built over many years, but living life with having more focus or putting more emphasis on giving joy than being joyful. It's really powerful, man.
It is. It has been for me. And to talk about someone like John Wyman, who is just such a wonderful spirit and does give so much, I think.
And he wears those pants at parties.
He does, and those wild shirts.
Dude, it's amazing.
It's awesome. Just authentically
John.
It's
authentically John.
But I think in order to give something like joy, one must also have it. It's very difficult to give what you don't have.
Yeah.
And we don't always need to be joyful, full of joy in order to bring joy to others.
Yeah.
But it can be a situation oftentimes where you give so much to others that you as a vessel can become empty or sad or depressed. And I don't think that it's uncommon for those who bring the most joy actually to be among the saddest, because we give and we give and we give. And I believe also in the Tao Te Ching, although I could be wrong there, I'm reading a few different things at once right now. They talk about a vessel, a full glass of water, and you give somebody your full glass of water, and then you ask them if they would like more, and they say, yes, I would like more, I could use more, and you find yourself without any water to give. And it's not that you don't understand water, nor that you can't fill it up, but often you can only give when you're out of water. Mm-hmm. And yet we still try to give, and yet you still try to give. Yeah. And again, instead of reaching for money or fame or the other things that one might be driven by trying to give joy to others, without taking the time to restore joy in yourself, I think can also be a path, a dangerous path. And so I think a lot for me of what it is being aware of what I can actually give and when I can give it, because when I'm feeling peaceful and full, I feel I have a lot to give.
Yeah.
And there are certainly times in my life, everything comes in and out. Everything is a wave, except perhaps men's bell bottoms. I don't think those have come back, and maybe they won't ever. But short of that, everything comes and goes. And my being aware at the times that I am not full, and being aware of the way that I'm responding to the world, is really important to me. Someone far wiser than I once said to me, the difference between heaven and hell is simply the pair of sunglasses you choose to wear on a given day. Well, you never put the sunglasses on if you don't leave the house. So for me, one of the biggest things is, even in my empty moments, which come and go, to take a walk, to step outside, to choose to put the sunglasses on and say to myself and to my body, thank you. Thank you for being empty, for showing me that that everything ebbs and flows, and for giving me the ability now to become more comfortable in moments of emptiness, so that I can better understand others when they're having these moments as well. And also to keep me from hubris, to keep me from arrogance, to remind me of all the beautiful imperfections that I have as well. And so, again, it's the gratitude for the hard things, the gratitude for the gritty things, for the things that hurt, because it's those, as I tell my kids, it's from those that we learn, it's from those that we grow. And those are the moments where it's very difficult for me to say, no, I can't give that to you right now. I always still want to say yes. And then that was another great quote that came along to me one time. And I was complaining many years ago. I was like, I just keep making introductions and helping people and doing this. I'm just always helping people. I don't feel like nobody's reciprocating. My buddy's like, well, why would they, dude? I'm like, well, because look at what I'm doing. He's like, hey man, you're the doorman. That's awesome. But just stop opening the door for everybody else if every now and then you want to come inside too. But as far as we're concerned, you're just doing your job. You're the doorman. And I was like, how interesting. I had never thought of it that way. As though I had thought that I was building up credit. I was doing all these nice things. I
can really relate to that.
And they were going to come back, no, I was the doorman. And be happy to be then the doorman, because you are giving joy. Just for me to be very careful.
You're just helping people.
Yeah.
You're a connector.
Right. And so for me, very important then to make sure that as I get the door for people, that I know that that's what I'm choosing to do.
Yeah.
That I have it within me to do that right now.
Yeah. That's really good. The doorman. I've been the doorman. But it's sort of in my built-in value proposition, is that I am there to facilitate for other people resources that they might not have vetted. So because I vetted them, I've done my job, and maybe that is how I give joy, making people's lives a little easier. But I also have to probably stop and pause and realize that it's something that I'm sharing because it's made my life easier. And I, through hard work or whatever you want to call it, I've built sort of that privilege because it has moved in my direction, right? So I need to stop. I need to stop keeping track and checks and balances, thinking that I've built credit and that I'm expecting for some kind of either attaboy. Because for me, a lot it's in the way of appreciation and gratitude. I always say I do a lot for appreciation. And if I can just stop that and stop doing for appreciation and be more authentic and stop doing for anything without zero expectation, because somebody told me not long ago that I make things transactional when I expect an attaboy or a thank you. Instead of making things just what they are, I tend to make them a transaction, because now I did something for you. One day you're probably going to do something for me, or at least you're going to call me and tell me how wonderful I am.
Yeah, or you think I'm wonderful. Again, I think at the most simple form, reaching for something else, appreciation, in order to fill yourself up. Again, using others to fill up that well, and perhaps then developing resentment when nobody else does, when 100%. Ultimately, in my experience, they cannot anyway.
No, absolutely. And that's not how, it's just not even how it works. It's all self-created, this whole turmoil thing it's all in here. It's not them.
Yeah. What did Yogananda say? I believe it was him. It's discomfort is a part of life. We create suffering for ourselves. Maybe that's the Bhagavad Gita.
But I like it because it's true.
That's the idea. Discomfort is natural. And frankly, something that human beings can be very good at, being uncomfortable and still being themselves. But through the rejection of that and the fight against it and the self-pity and the self-doubt and the victimization, this isn't right, I deserve, I am, I need, all of these eyes, that then the suffering is created, the tornado begins, the storms strike and begin to twist within us, and then anger and hatred and all of that underneath it is, in my experience, for me, it's just a little kid who's just like,
it's a little kid.
Dude, I'm alone and I'm scared, and I would like to feel not that way. And so that just isn't about having somebody else. You can't hire a babysitter or a doula. It's then caring for that inner child and saying, yeah, I hear you, man. I understand. And thank you for being there for me and for reminding me. And it's that inner gratitude versus, the choosing to be a victim is something I believe I see a lot of in society. Choosing to be a victim of circumstance, of life. And there are victims in this world. I personally prefer to refer to them as survivors.
That's fair. I just feel like so much of this for me has started with the realization of how important self-care is. Because I think a lot of it has been more of the just go reaching for that next thing, as you were saying. So I think that I was just talking to my friend a little while ago, and I was just saying, gosh, it's almost been next month it'll be a year since I literally stopped eating sugar, oil, and salt. I stopped eating sugar, oil, salt, caffeine, and alcohol, and animal products. So dairy, everything is gone. So I mean, you can do the math and you can think about what's left, but some people think that there's not a lot left, and what I say is it's a different mindset. And what I say is, no, now I'm free, because now I don't eat anything processed. Now I eat everything. I eat nothing but wonderful food, because I took all the bad stuff out. There is nothing congestive or nothing that might plug my arteries or nothing that can spike my blood pressure. And I've dropped like 80 pounds in less than a year. And, I have who knows how many more to go, but I'm working on that and doing scans to check out body fat content and just enjoying, literally living, being present with that. And because I came to that realization that self-care was something that I just neglected my entire life. Everything was the goal. And the goal was never me. The goal was everything else very external.
Yeah, and the minute you closed that garage, didn't matter if it was a Porsche or a Ferrari or 6 Ferraris.
Didn't matter.
As soon as you closed the
Didn't
garage,
matter.
emptiness waited.
It was there, and it's funny because then I've been thrashing for years, and my wife can speak to this better than anybody. I've been thrashing for years with shedding things. For years I've been getting rid of business suits, Italian shoes.
So it felt good.
The best. I mean, selling $500 shoes at $2 at a garage sale and somebody wanting to bargain for $1. It was the coolest thing ever.
Right.
I mean, it was just like shedding. Talk about fat. That was the first layer of fat I had to work through, was shedding stuff.
Yeah.
And then that kind of became a thing, and then shedding debt, and then shedding. There was a time in my life, Ian, that I woke up every morning, a commission paid person woke up every morning to have to pay $80,000 a month in debt, credit card debt. I bought real estate. I would have a lot of houses and negative cash flow. So debt on those, debt on my house. The power bill on my house was almost $2,000 a month because it was huge. I mean, it was overwhelming pressure to just get on a hamster wheel every day.
I can imagine.
To produce that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And like you said, and when you closed the doors, it was just a house. It didn't matter if it was the big one or this little one, or it didn't even matter. It was just what we've created for ourselves, which was just a prison. Literally golden handcuffs that you just had to go grind it out every day to be in this misery to produce at that level. And it took years to get off the hamster wheel. And I'm fortunate that so many years later, I get to do things a lot more peripherally, and run some things a lot more peripherally. So I find that just in the last year, I'm finding more joy and balance because I'm taking care of me first, and in some regard. And it really, I say it often, it comes back to that airplane, metaphor of, you got to put the mask, not a metaphor, but you got to do it. If an airplane goes down, put the mask on yourself first, and then you can help some people. And I'm starting to finally get that. But I think it's like an iceberg. I'm just working on the exterior tip, but I think there's still so much more in the bottom that needs to be addressed. And that's why I'm fascinated that I'm crossing paths with people like you. I'm really fascinated and grateful. More than fascinated, I'm grateful.
Right.
And speaking of gratitude, one of the things that I've made a practice of recently is, every morning I get up, literally the first thing I do is write 5 things I'm grateful for that happened the day before. And I know that's a very simple practice, and it seems to most people that don't do that, or even for me, before I did it, I just thought, it's silly. What is that going to do? What can that really do? And I got to tell you, man, it can do a lot.
Yeah.
It can do so much by just, and I write the most basic things. Like something, the 5 things could be Susan, London, Goku, Tyson, Sierra, Jerry. It might be the names of 5 people that I love and adore, or the next day it could be my daughter, Alana. It could be Sid or fiance. I mean, or it could be, I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful that I'm on this path of healing and nurturing, and just very simple lines that I go back, and now there's almost a year's worth of these lines, and I go through it, and I'm just like, wow, I haven't forgotten. Yeah. That I'm still grateful for those things. I'm grateful for the podcast. I'm grateful that I get to meet people like you. And I think gratitude is so underrated, right?
It's a way of living. 2 things you said I think are especially beautiful. I love the iceberg that you said, mostly because not especially, but specifically in this case, that iceberg already exists. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not already there. And I love that, because people are often saying, I just need to change this. I need to choose that. I can't wait to find this. When the reality, or all this sculpting, the truth is it's already there. And it may just be submerged. or maybe it's not even submerged. Maybe it's right there in front of you. It's just a matter of perspective. Another thing is, they say attitude of gratitude, which is a little bit trite, because it is said there's so much depth to it, but it's catchy. So if it helps, it helps. Yes, I think it changes our viewpoint, but it also changes your brain. I'm not sure how much you know about neurology or what goes on in the brain, but it very specifically and simply put, being grateful changes your brain. Your brain actually grows. The part of your brain physically grows that is more associated with gratitude and the release of the chemicals associated with that. If you, on the other hand, say that have a lot of less gratitude, that part of your brain, if you are complaining, that part of your brain will grow too. If you say, I am not a morning person, you will set that standard. That part of your brain will change. The elasticity of the human brain, of all brains, it's amazing. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you start choosing gratitude, that part of your brain will grow. It's very much like lifting a weight or choosing what you eat. The outside of you changes. When you choose to be grateful, your brain physically changes. It's not just your attitude. It is your brain changing. And that was something that was really impactful for me, was understanding that by being grateful, even in those little ways, every time you did that, that was another curl. If you need an example, every time you did that, that was another press. Every time you wrote one of those gratitude things, that was another, broccolini.
Well, it's funny you say that. Now that you're saying broccolini, you reminded me of Dr. Goldhammer, which I had on this podcast. He wrote a book called The Pleasure Trap, along with another Dr. Lyle. And Dr. Goldhammer would, what was it that he, excuse me, I think he would agree that for me, a lot of these things, and that neuroplasticity of the mind, I think he would agree that for me, it opened up when I started eating better. I think the ability to, because I remember I used to say when I started eating the way that I eat now, I started saying, I'm thinking better. I'm thinking clearer. I'm feeling better. And it could have been, maybe dopamine that I was getting from, who knows, jumping on the scale and feeling better and feeling more joy and things like that. But for whatever reason, I was certainly appreciating the fact that I had the capacity to realize that appreciation was missing in my life, more appreciation and focusing on all the wonderful things I've built and I have around me. And by the way, always, it takes a banana peel for any of us mortals to be broke tomorrow. Let's be honest, right? Because nobody here is Rockefeller. Nobody's here. But nobody that I know wants to be Rockefeller, or nobody that I know wants to aspire to be that, because that also comes at a price. And some of those lives are lives that are honestly in misery or just pure pain, because they don't get the joy that we get to just live amongst each other.
That's right.
And commune amongst each other, because for some of those people, that's a very small, finite group of people. You just can't go outside of that group.
Yeah.
So there's appreciation in the way that we are, the way that we live, and most of those people want to be us. Most of those people, want to go to the salsa and the merengue parties. They don't want to go to the ball.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Yeah.
To that point, Rockefeller, my understanding is that that entire family was one domino away from having everything fall when they developed Manhattan. And was that everything they had was that there was a very, very good chance that the port chosen wasn't going to be Manhattan. And should that have happened, because they didn't want to cut, there was all this extra building, all the bridges. Had that deal not gone through, then that would have been over. That was somebody else's decision ultimately. Okay, we will do this through Manhattan, or let's not do it through Manhattan. Otherwise, yes, Rockefeller, instead of one of the great, quote unquote, American success stories, would be perhaps one of the great failure stories. And again, I don't the word success and failure, good, bad, right, wrong, all of those labels for me are I don't like to use labels at all. As a matter of fact, and I like to be very careful when I talk about these things, because I know how important it is for people to right now to have identities and to be comfortable and be happy, and they deserve to do that. I believe strongly that everyone should be able to love who they want to love, be who they want to be, do what they want to do, choose what they want to choose without hurting, as long as they don't hurt other people. And I think that one of the things that's going on right now is we're dividing, and we're dividing by labels. I am this, you are that. And what's interesting is if you look at tribal cultures and things way back in history, when everybody lived together, there wasn't a them, a me and a them. We were all together and we were surviving. And then as we grew, somebody stayed on the mountain, somebody didn't. It's like, okay, we're the valley people, they're the mountain people, and they have more artichokes than we do. We need those artichokes. So it's through division that war begins, that all these different things, the separation. My experience recently is that there are more labels and more ways to divide humanity than ever before. Not just that, we're forcing them on other people. I am different, and I need you to change who you are so that I can be comfortable being different. Yeah. And for me, it's like, I think it's awesome that you're different. I think it's great that you're making these choices and that you're finding your inner beauty and your inner self. I feel a little uncomfortable that you're now telling me how I needed to behave around you, though. Can we not just agree to both be humans and appreciate each other for who each other are, not dissect language and labels, but rather choose humanity and support and be one together, independent of our differences, rather choose to be one. And so when I was becoming very confused by this argument about gender, because it's a social construct, and I can't help but wonder why we need it. Like, there are males, there are females. It's a scientific thing, right? Where then everything beyond that, whether it be pink or blue, my understanding is that these are societal choices. And I can't help but wonder then, as we talk about labels, what happens as we stop choosing labels that are so divisive and start choosing to just respect each other as human beings. Respect that I will never understand what it's like to be born one way and feel inside a different way. I don't know what that's going to be like, and I don't know how to do anything other than accept that human and listen to they are. But these labels of right, wrong, rich, poor, black, white, all these things, they are ways that our brains categorize things. I just wonder how much, and I wonder if you have any thoughts, how much good it's doing for our culture and our society to begin to define ourselves by them and to divide, as I see it, divide ourselves with them.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that right now. I'm trying to find a way to stay above it and become part of the solution, not I feel like I'm part of the problem. I feel resentment. I built resentment, especially when you talk about race. I have built resentment around it, and I don't like that I'm building resentment around it, because I don't believe resentment is going to help inside change, or or help anything for that matter. I'm literally in the middle of processing that and giving that time to settle. And I never thought that I would have the problems or the encounters that I've had with racism, that I've had because I've been privileged enough to be the shade that I am and from where I'm at, and because I was raised in a place where it was it's almost like Italians, a lot of times Italians that are white, they consider themselves white,
right?
Because they're white, and they don't feel some of them don't feel the prejudice that let's say a black person would feel like, or a Mexican may feel like, or different races, but because I grew up around people of my culture, I'm half Puerto Rican, half Cuban. So if I go to Miami, I just fit right in. I'm just another white Cuban. That's what I would be considered, or a white Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico. So I've never felt prejudice in those places, but now that I'm in the West Coast and it's a little different. I came to Napa when I was 19 or 20 years old from New York City, and till that point I never felt racism until I moved to Napa. And my name is not Jerry Pujols. Jerry is the translation of Geraldo, which is my real name, and Pujols is my maiden name, which is more accepted than my actual last name, which is Rodriguez. And when I came to Napa, Napa, as a kid, I grew up, my father taught me how to run heavy equipment. I was able to run heavy equipment from the time I was 12 or 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I can jump on a bulldozer. Imagine a kid at 12, 13 years old running bulldozers, which is a lot of fun until you got to do it 8, 10 hours, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I was put to work pretty early. But it was a trade that my father passed on to me, and I can always make a decent living doing that. I came to Napa at that age, and with a last name like Rodriguez, nobody let you get on a piece of heavy equipment back in those days.
Probably today there's
no. Today you women, Hispanics primarily. You see a lot of Hispanics. It's changed a lot.
That's wonderful.
But the last name Rodriguez wouldn't get you on one back then. I mean, I had somebody say to me, "Get off of that piece of equipment, you wetback," and words that I had never heard. So those moments have stayed with me, and they have sort of built. And if you go on Facebook, you'll see a post of mine just ranting because I live in a gated community, so I have that privilege now. I'm a member of a country club. I have that privilege now, and it was 3 months, 2-3 months ago, where we had an ethnic concert at the country club, and a few of those gated communities decided that they wanted to bring armed guards, security in front of their gates because they were afraid.
Wow.
And it was such a friend of mine who's, let's call him a white guy. He's half Italian, half Croatian, so he's really not an Anglo from here. He's an Anglo from his country.
Right.
Yeah, he's an immigrant, like most of us.
Welcome to America.
Thank you. Yeah. He was speaking to his disappointment and embarrassment, how somebody would choose to do that and put out that message that because there is a concert that is very secure and very put together, that you needed more security on top of having a gate in front of your community. So the other day, just last week, they had a Latin concert. So I was walking around and everybody kind of looked like me in the concert and this and that. I think, oh, cool. By the way, this concert, the tickets were $450 a ticket. So it's not like a concert of teenagers or anything like that. It was kind of an expensive venue. And sure enough, here are the guards out there again for this concert. And I finally put a post on Facebook speaking to how disappointed, disgusted I am at a club that I happen to be a member of, and that there is a few, I use the word fucking idiots, who would just send out a message like that and put up security when these things are so well managed and so well handled, and you don't need security in front of your gates and all this bullshit that people do. But I'm finding that resentment that I'm spewing is not helping them nor me.
Well, that's contagious too, just like hope, right? So, I mean, I would postulate that the people who were requesting that security, they probably had negative experience in their past too. Perhaps not with any specific culture. Who knows what it is? But they probably responding out of fear,
Absolutely,
and insecurity.
Yeah.
And so for me, the question then becomes, how do I unify with them? How do I have compassion for these human beings who have clearly been hurt or have been denied information or experiences that would allow them to understand that there's actually in this experience beauty and safety? How do we connect with these people who are afraid, who need our compassion and who need information? Because right now they're victims. They're scared and they're fighting and they're protecting from a ghost. There's nothing there. And so, I in my experience, when I respond, and like all humans, I do with anger or I reciprocate, then I realize, and so often I've then fed the beast. I've given them
what I feel like.
The person they were afraid of.
That's what I feel like. Absolutely.
And I have instead of chosen to look within and be my best self and identify the what I like to find, which is compassion.
Yeah.
You have been hurt. You have been denied information. You are scared.
Yeah.
And I want to help you be not scared.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to be like, let me give you something to really be afraid of.
Yeah, no, that's really what it is.
You idiot.
Yeah.
I'm now going to show you exactly what you deserve. And it's like, they're like, I knew it. And you're like,
right.
Oh no.
You're right. You're right.
Dang, instead of loving you, I've hated you. And now that hate is contagious. Instead of giving you hope through compassion, I attacked you back. And that's something that I think a lot about and talk a lot about in boxing. Because you'll see two people sparring and somebody will get hit.
Yeah.
And they'll be ready to hit back. And that is the moment where you are by far the most vulnerable.
You're going to get hurt.
You are going to get hurt. You've lost your composure. You're not skillful. Your hands are down and you're ready to attack. You become a vicious animal instead of somebody who's like, nice punch.
I have a strategy.
Let me reset and rethink and relearn.
Yeah.
And so it's that same moment where it's like, you just took one to the face. Are you going to then just come swinging out and show them that you are the beast, the fighter that they deserve to get punched? Or are you going to be that thoughtful person that says, all right,
strategic.
That was a good one. And you know what? I didn't like that. So I'm going to soften the way that I punch in hopes that perhaps you'll do the same. Or let's have a conversation about not hitting each other so hard. We're supposed to be learning together. And what you just did was a little more than I'm ready for. So there's a lot of different spaces that one can choose outside of the, ooh, I'm going to get you back. Because I'm not sure that anybody ever gets anybody back. It just takes everybody down.
Yeah.
In my experience.
Yeah, no, I can totally, because that's probably the shame that I'm carrying. There's shame after that post, which, by the way, I'm going to take down now.
Well, perhaps it's not shame. Perhaps it's opportunity. Perhaps it's an opportunity to share a new thought on that post, to keep that post and be vulnerable. And I'm interested. I don't have answers for anyone else. I try and find them for myself, but perhaps this is an opportunity rather to reflect on that post publicly and say, I'm not ashamed of this. I am a human being and I responded like a human being, but after some time I've given it some thought. And I realized that I want to get a better understanding. I don't want to scare people. I want to get a better understanding of why you feel that way so that I can spend time with you and together we can build an understanding of what's really going on here and why your fears. How do I dissuade your fears? How can I be compassionate? How can I support you? How can I provide you the information you need to welcome this without fear? And it's the hard stuff. That's just it, right? These hard things, these moments where I make tons of mistakes and I can either hide them and erase them or I can embrace them. Because this is not now just an opportunity for me to learn.
There's no such thing as erasing.
No, well, right?
They're in you.
It happened, right? So there's healing then perhaps for you and for whomever it is that might have been offended by, and then anybody else who gets on the bandwagon and says, you know what, that's right. Them. It's them. Well, how do we get all of those people together then and say, well, let's all get them together and become us? Because together we can have a concert without security, and together we can educate each other. And we can stop being victims and we can start growing. And so I see so often once I get past the emotion, whether it be yelling at my kid for me saying 6 times, don't carry that way, don't carry it that way. And then the ice cream's on the ground and the shop's closed and I can't get it. I told you so. Or I would be so bummed if I lost that ice cream. Let's find something else that can make you happy since we can't get that. Let's talk about how we got to where we are, right? It's not, I told you so. It's, all right, this is where we are. Now, how can we get to the next place? We, not me and him. That helps me because, oh man, my first response, that's not like the brain, the whatever it is, it's the me.
That's right.
Instead of.
Holding on loosely. Holding on loosely. So I heard your original. Was that yours?
Thank you. Yeah, I found that's the one that I shared with you.
It's beautiful, man.
Oh, thank you. I wrote that with a friend of mine named Jefferson Lee Rhodes. I mentioned my friend who had been through the struggles at the same time I did. So I wrote the song "Found," and then he made an incredible amount of he changed the lyrics. We worked on it together. We sang it together. He sang it. He changed we built that song together, and there's so much beauty for me in having collaborated with a human being that I've known since I was 15 and been making music with on and off since I was 15. And so I'm really glad you enjoyed that.
Oh, it was amazing, man. Would you give me permission to play it at the end of our recording?
Oh yeah, please do.
Would it be okay?
Yeah, of course.
It'd be fun to close with this. Idishan, can we make that happen? You think we can dub over? Yeah, it'd be nice to close with that because it's beautiful, man. I played it for my kids. I've received things like that before, but you kind of yeah, you kind of.
No.
Some of them are okay, but some of them are not. They're different tastes. Yours,
That's right.
And that's more of a country genre.
It is. I would say I could say folk or country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple, but for me, it's or Americana. It's really just acoustic music.
Yeah.
That's for me. I was writing it. I just sat down and it was after one of those mass shootings actually that got me going. I was like, what's happening? Why are we doing this? Why did you get your gun, and why do you keep shooting while the children run? What not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you?
What happened to you?
And how do we stop this from happening? And so that's what this is about. That's what Found is about. It's if we are lost, will we be found? Is there a God of whatever your understanding of that is? Perhaps it's the great outdoors. I love it when people define God as the great outdoors. I think that's so
can connect with that.
Cool, because we are all the great outdoors.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you understand what energy is, we're all energy, we're all movement. That's part of the great outdoors. So perhaps that's God for you, or perhaps God is a white male with a beard, or a black male with a beard, or a female, whatever, a Latin,
your God,
whatever, the your greater power, the person of your choosing, whatever it may be. And so for me, this song is about when the word God is used in that song, it's about humanity as a whole, and looking within. Why is this happening? How can we come together? How can we unify and find answers for what's happening to people? Not with blame, not with regret, not with fear, not with anger, but with compassion. And this song for me was written in 15 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. And then it was handed to Jeff, and then we spent a lot of time continuing and changing and building it, because Jeff and I have pretty much opposing political views. We've grown up differently. He wants to be alone on his farm and not be messed with. I want to be surrounded by people and my family. He wants to educate his daughter himself at home. I like my kids being in a public school. So we're incredibly different humans. But so what I loved about this process was we share a love, we share a history, we share a lot, but we don't share the same God, and we don't share the same political views, and we don't share the same any of those things. And yet we were able to come together as humans and say, how can we look at what's happening here, and not judge other people's solutions, and not judge anything, but rather come together. And that's what Found is about.
Amazing. Impressive.
Yes, we'll see. It's a beautiful process. I don't do it for the outcome, which I guess I've said enough times. I do it for the experience and for the writing of the music, because for me that's joy, and perhaps that joy is shared. And I know that we should wrap up, and perhaps this is a nice way to do it. My dad used to say something to me about joy that I love, and it's something I tell my kids all the time. Joy shared is doubled, and pain shared is halved. Yeah. And I love that, because the more people you share your joy with, the more it grows.
So on our last note, what is there any comparison with winemaking to that? Because winemaking, there's so much that disappoints me about wine and the wine industry.
Well, at the end of the day, we're drug dealers, farmers and drug dealers.
Well, and what disappoints me is, you hear it over and over, wine is the story. And it's the story, and wine is marketing. And that's so true, right? Because there are great wines that go nowhere, and there are not so great wines that go everywhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of consumer confusion. One of my favorites right now is this idea of natural wines.
So now it's a new thing, natural wines.
Natural wines, which doesn't mean anything. Are they biodynamic? Are they organic?
Where
natural is a word that's undefined.
Natural is the most undefined word in anything.
Exactly, and now there's a whole section of natural wines.
Natural wine.
And some of them really are biodynamic.
I love the skinny vodka.
Yeah, so it's what is this? And so Am I disappointed in the wine industry? I think it's some.
No, that wasn't the question.
Oh, what is the question? Excuse me.
No, the question was going to be more of your creativity when it comes to music. There is a super creative element when it comes to wine, right? You have your own label, so you have full expression. It's not the same for winemakers that work in the wine industry, I imagine, right? Or it depends.
It's different for everyone. I mean, large corporations, there's a whole team, and different people doing different things in different vineyards and different locations and different identities. And then there are small wineries, there are brands. You know, some people farm their own vineyards. It's an incredible amount of diversity within the industry. What people do. Some people just buy juice. Some people buy fruit. Some people have a system where they just send it to a location and it's made for them. Some people do everything from vine to bottle. There are a lot of different things one can do. Some people buy juice and add powder to it to make it flavored. Some people use concentrates.
Do you find a parallel between winemaking and your creative process and making music? Is it a different medium, just a different medium, and it's still creatively artistic, or?
For me, it's still storytelling.
It's still
what you mentioned earlier. Wine for me is part of the story. And the beauty of wine is when done the way that we do it and that many others do, it's really just about harvesting and getting out of the way, letting the vines do the work, and then a creative process that's existed for thousands of years and being honoring that process. And then it's about being a part of the story. The thing about wine in my mind is you're sitting around with the people you love and you open a bottle of wine and you share it and you tell a story and you've got the flavor profiles, and perhaps year after year, whether it be that bottle or another, it accompanies stories, it accompanies family. It's a part of our lives and a part of the story that isn't just about getting wasted or any of those things, but rather it's a part of the story. And when you think about that same gathering, what might also be going on in the background besides a bottle of wine being drinking, there might also be music in the background. So wine, like music, can be part of the
visceral experience
and the experience that comes together and brings humans together. And that's what I love, and that's the creative comparison that for me is strongest.
Till Uncle Bob has the whole bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it changes the dynamic.
Exactly.
That's not wine tasting. That's not wine.
No, you may be revisiting a few too many times. History. That's right. But that's for me what it is. It's being a part of the story. It's being a part of other people's lives. It's being a part of humanity. And I think that wine and music, can be that. Music can also incite anger and fear.
But look at downtown Napa. I saw it coming long before we have any music going on in downtown Napa. I said, this is poised. Downtown Napa is poised to be the next Nashville.
It could be.
It's poised. I mean, it's just perfect. Why not, right? Why would you have all these places without music?
Yeah.
What doesn't make sense, it's happening now. I mean, a lot of places are putting in music. Not so much live music yet. I think live music, it's going to come. I hope
so. One thing, I think that what it will require is people with stories to tell. And the willingness to tell those diverse stories through music. Where you look at Nashville, you look at Austin, these are areas that have a lot of strife within and areas where there's conflict and that where music is becoming an answer to that conflict. And I think one might look to American Canyon or Benicia or other areas, Calistoga, where there is, division, where there's cultural shifting that can push that groundswell into a Nashville, into an Austin, into one of these areas. And so I think that there is that opportunity there, but creativity is often born in areas that are not exactly what internal Napa is right now, but when
Napa's the bubble. You need to be outside of the bubble.
Well, it's as we expand our thought as to what Napa County is, or to maybe we talk about the wine country as a whole, and Napa being one of those small areas in Nashville where everybody comes to listen to the music. So I think that it's still a fair comparison, especially as you look at it through a broader view.
Fascinating to see what's happening there. I mean, it's just, we've had this property for 10 years now, and the shift is, this was a long ways away from downtown Napa. Now this is considered downtown Napa.
Absolutely. No, it is. In my 15 years living here, it has changed dramatically. It used to be, where do you want to go to lunch? We could count the options on a hand.
It was never downtown Napa.
Every time I walk down the street, there's something new. There's a new Dutch door. Like, I love having eating there. And they've got their vegan options.
It's crazy.
There's so many options and so many that you can go and you can eat a $300 lunch. You can go get something for $6.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Super diverse.
the diversity and the diversity of people. I was just downtown.
That's finally
I
happened.
saw a big group of Hispanic people, of Black people, of white people, of Asian people, of every kind of culture walking around downtown Napa together. And it's like
unheard of when I got here.
So wonderful, because that when I raise my kids and then when I'm raising them here, that is the one thing. When I bought my first home, it was in Oakland. It was in the Oakland Hills, and I was surrounded by diversity.
Yeah.
Like you didn't see two of the same people of the same color walking together. And I got up here and it's like, wow, there's a lot of white people. And then on the block aside, and now there are a lot of Hispanic people or Latinx, whatever label.
That's all you had here was whites and Hispanics. I would say.
Right, and they were and
it wasn't like full multiple races of Hispanics. It was whites and Mexicans. That's all you had.
And they were separate.
And separate.
They were completely separate. And now even that is like at my son's school, they're all together. Yesterday I went and picked him up, and they were doing some Pokemon trading, and it was like I'm just
still a thing, huh?
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't. They were all together. It was great.
The Pokemon trading.
Pokemon was the whole thing. White, black, brown, blah, whatever the color. I don't know what ethnic they're. I don't know what. I don't care. But it was just like it was colors of the rainbow together, trading Pokemon. And this, I'm so proud to see this happening in my kids' school in Napa Valley.
And Napa is a great place to raise your kids. I mean, I will give you that. From my experience, it's been a great place to raise a family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, probably a lot more stable for me than a place like Miami or New York or things like that are just a lot faster pace, and some of those places have a little bit more issues in schools and all that. This is pretty nice.
Yeah.
By all accounts, it's just not a bad place to live. So I think
I'm very
talk about gratitude. Yeah, we're
very grateful.
Super grateful about that, man. So so I love the idea of sharing space again, man. This is really cool.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you sharing your story, for allowing others to share their stories with you, for creating this open, comfortable, wonderful space where people can come and be honest and share hope, which, as we agreed, is contagious.
Let's do it. Let's do it again.
Keep sharing hope.
Thanks, man. I love it. That was awesome.
Here we are, just sitting around with our backs to the world while we're spinning around. Sometimes it's hard to believe why somebody go and get their guns and just keep shooting while our children run. And is it time to fight or time to flee? And how can we see eye to eye, come together with love in mind, change the world with trust and belief? Time when you weren't around. Oh God, well, I know what's in your hands and everything will work out. Oh God, we are lost, will we be found? Will we be found? Will we ever be found? They say there's a cycle to life, born, raised up, and someday we'll die. But I know there's more here than seen. And I don't care what labels you choose, the color of your skin, your money, your shoes. Love don't build walls, and why do you? I know it's in your hands and everything will work out. Oh God, my God. If we're lost, will we be found? Will we be found? Will we ever be found? I don't understand all that I see, but I know this life ain't all about me. Sometimes it don't come